not actually logged in.
Great. We'll just record this part because we usually don't record our open conversation. I think it would be helpful. We have the lovely Nancy Grant here from Friends of Woodford's Corner, who's going to talk this morning about some work she does with their board about annual appeal or fundraising training in general. So it'll be a really good conversation that I think you will all benefit from as you work with your committees, your volunteers, or your boards. But I thought it might be helpful if who's here just says hello and where they're from. Sylvie, you've met Nancy before at the Ben Levenger. Yeah, okay. Denise, we'll start with you just for quick intros so Nancy can know who's here.
Hi, Nancy. I'm Denise from Calais and Baileyville.
Great. Nancy Ketch.
Hi, Nancy Ketch. I'm from Bolton.
And Amanda.
Amanda McDaniel, Main Street, Bath.
And Abby.
Hi, Abby Leibowitz, Assistant Director of Heart of Biddeford.
Great. And I will say, Nancy can tell you about herself, but Nancy was director of a large statewide, wonderful advocacy and education organization, Bicycle Coalition of Maine. So Nancy, in that role, you had to do a lot of fundraising for sure. But she is also a wonderful volunteer with our Superstar affiliate program, Friends of Woodford's Corner. And Nancy and I were just going to have a conversation to kind of, she didn't prepare a presentation because I don't think she needed to, right, Nancy?
I hope not.
No. So anyway, Nancy, why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about your background with kind of fundraising? Like, let's just start there, and what you've done in the world.
Okay, and before I do that,
yeah,
are the 4 towns here all Main Street?
We have 2 affiliates and
okay.
2 main streets here today. So the main streets, as you know, are staffed and 501c3 professional staff, Abby being assistant director, Amanda being a full-time director. And Nancy and Denise are from affiliates. Both of them are kind of more municipal based and work with volunteers on downtown revitalization efforts. I would say Nancy Ketch has a regular committee that is probably doing some fundraising in the community. And Denise is going to get there someday, right, Denise?
Yes, someday. We just had a meeting last night, and we're gonna have to have another meeting on that. So
great.
Someday.
Great. Yeah.
It's in the works.
And obviously, Nancy, there's lots of the others that requested to see the recording of you. So that's everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So as Ann said, I ran a nonprofit called the Bicycle Coalition of Maine from 2011 to 2017, and I had almost no fundraising experience before then, and really had to learn on the fly. And I will say that I think that's the only way you learn. Nobody enters this world and goes, oh, I think fundraising would be fun. I think I'll go learn how to do it and then do it. Most people do have to be forced. There's a lot of really negative instincts about fundraising, and I want to talk a little bit about those more as we get going. So I did that for 7 years, and I actually went from being so uncomfortable and nervous and awkward to really enjoying fundraising. And there's just nothing more affirming than when you make an ask and somebody says, sure, or maybe I'll give you more than you asked for. Anyway, when I left the Bicycle Coalition, I then switched over to Portland Trails, which is an incredibly awesome organization right in Portland, with about 75 miles of trails, primarily in Portland, but a little in Falmouth, a little in Westbrook. And I was the development director, and I worked there for 3 years. Had a really fun first year, and then COVID kicked in. So that definitely changed the fundraising landscape. But actually, it turned out it made it better for us because we were an organization that didn't have a lot of programming and events that had to all be reorganized. We just had these resources that allowed people to get outside. And I would say the only thing I didn't like was just sort of doing everything through email and Zooms, because I am very much a people person and like to be with people, but I could actually meet with them, you know, out on the trail, even in the thick of COVID. I've been on the board of Friends of Woodford's Corner for about 6 years, and I totally entered it with the focus of active transportation and trying to take the 4-lane highway that runs through the middle of our corner called Forest Avenue into something a little more friendly, more walkable, more bikeable. But as our little, it's now a 10-year-old organization. I think we've only been with Main Street for maybe 4 or 5 years. Yeah, I mean, we just had to start fundraising, and then I've sort of become a lead there. And on the annual appeal side of things, we'd never had one, and we just decided to do one. The first year we did it would have been 2021, and we did it. And all of a sudden we raised 10 grand. And each year we've done it, we've raised a little more. This year we're trying to raise 20 grand. And just following a formula has gotten us that money. It has also required that our board members kick in, and they, like most human beings, don't want to have anything to do with this. And that's why I have run trainings for them. And just so you know, my daughter runs a nonprofit too, and she has a problem with her board and them never helping with fundraising. So I spent a lot of time preparing for a training that I did for them 2 weeks ago. And so it was all very fresh in my brain when Anne swooped in with an email asking me if I would help this group.
So Nancy, here's a question. Would you say the need that you saw in Friends of Woodford's Corner was that the board was not interested, excited, thinking they had the ability to fundraise themselves and participate in the fundraising effort? Like, you just saw, like, whoa, this is who should be doing the fundraising, and there's nothing. Is that kind of what made you say, oh, I need to start training this group?
I think it was a little bit that, but I think it was also, we're doing a lot without much money. I mean, 5 years ago, our budget was $3,000 a year. Now it's more like 50. And so A, we wanted more money. B, even though one of the 3 key duties of a board member is around the finances of the organization, both ensuring that it's responsible and reliable, but also that they help with that. And our board was just oblivious to that concept. And then 3, that, I mean, we had people who were putting hours of volunteer time into the organization each week, and even their closest friends didn't know. And
Right.
so it was
Good point.
also, you know, fundraising is
Yeah.
a big part of fundraising. Fundraising really starts with fundraising. You know, people have to know that you're there and what you're doing and that you're really passionate about it before they will ever think about giving money. And sometimes if they learn that first thing, boom, they automatically give money. So there's just this total lack of consciousness on this topic. And board members are really supposed to be involved.
That's a great way to put it. Amanda, Abby, Nancy, and Denise, any of you can relate to what Nancy's talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not a comfortable thing for anybody to ask for money when they haven't been doing it before. And I think there are a lot of tips and tricks out there, especially through probably our Main Street America folks and, Maine Association of Nonprofits. Even I haven't taken a look at, to make it easier. Tools, modes, activities that end up in fundraising. We've been tossing around the idea of a wine pull at our annual meeting for years and years, and for one reason or another, we just don't get ahead of it. But it just lots of little fun ways that we can not leave money on the table.
Okay, you need to tell me what a wine pull is. I'm sorry, I have no idea.
You ask for donations of wine from vendors and shops and places that sell wine, and they're supposed to donate, a really surprise variety of um, expensive to non-expensive wine, and you have them all bagged up on a table, like 100 of them, and then people at the dinner give $20 to pull a mystery bag, and sometimes they get a wine that's $60, sometimes they get $100 one, and it's just very exciting. It's
I see.
a
I love
Got
that.
it.
small bougie way to
Yeah.
get people, and that actually raises a ton of money. So
Wow.
yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah. Anyway,
Anybody else relating to what Nancy's talking about with your committees? Like Nancy Ketch, does your committee ever think about fundraising in Holton? I mean, you do for certain events, I know, but
Yeah,
fundraising for like the whole effort.
we haven't to this point because still trying to get our feet under us. And so, no, we haven't. I have with other organizations, but not
Yeah.
this group so much.
In the future, coming. And Abby, are you working on fundraising at all for Biddeford? Or is that more Delilah?
Yeah, less the annual appeals, more on the kind of like how some of our events are set up to be fundraisers, either through admission prices or just having more sponsors than being able to, break even on putting the event on. But yeah, definitely hard, like with sponsors to, how many times can you feasibly hit up the same like banks and credit unions for events throughout the year. So yeah, always a little bit of a challenge in finding different streams or different ways to raise money is something that we think about.
Yeah, and thinking about using your board and your committees to help, right? Yeah, and Denise, I don't want to not include you, but I know this might not be where you are yet, so chime in if you need to.
I'm with Nancy, still getting under our feet, getting our feet going and whatnot, but so definitely something the future to think about, and which is why I'm glad to be on this Zoom to
Right.
learn about that. So
I want to insert, especially for Callis and Holton, that we have two big disadvantages, which is actually maybe I guess it's just one. We are only part of the municipality. And we get, actually it is two. So we're part of the only a part of our entire Portland municipality. And we're the part of the city that city staff loves to ignore. We're not on the peninsula, which is a little more polished and fancy and where all the tourists go and stuff. And two, related to that, we get $0 from the municipality, even though we've been around as an entity for 10 years and as a Main Street affiliate for 4 or 5 years. And, we keep waiting, we keep hoping, and it's not happening. So this fundraising is even more important for us.
Yeah, that's a tough one. We're going to keep working on that. Nancy, do you want to tell these guys like what you do with your board to kind of empower them, and that might be helpful?
Yeah. So I I have seen a lot of fundraising instruction and training over the years. And I've also seen, you know, EDs and board chairs, assuming all of their board members know how to do this and basically saying, you know, the only instruction and support they get is, hey, make sure you invite your friends to our event. Hey, make sure, you know, you ask your friends to support us at the, you know, end of year appeal. And it's like there are about 100 steps before those kinds of requests are ever going to be responded to. So somewhere a little earlier would be, hey, here's the list of the 20 people I want you to reach out to and ask them for money. That again is assuming way too much. So where I start is at the very, very beginning, which is all about that predictable, very negative attitude about fundraising. And the two things, like I could probably give you 10 adages, but the two things that are the most compelling to me is three things. I'm going to do three. Is one, that the most important skill for fundraising is, anybody want to guess? Or the most important characteristic?
Communication?
You're close, but that's not what I was thinking of.
Relationship?
Yes, I mean, if you are a
able to talk
person
to
who
people.
is genuinely interested in other people, you're going to make a great fundraiser because you're going to be great at learning more about your donors and business people, city people, and being really excited about what they're interested in. And then all you have to do is make the connection between what they're interested in and what your organization is trying to do. If you were a person who spends 24 hours a day alone, dreads going to a party, can't stand your next door neighbor, doesn't get along with anybody at work, then I'd maybe say, you know, I don't think that person's going to be a good fundraiser. But anybody who likes other people and who likes speaking with other people and learning about them, that is by far the most important attribute. This is not rocket science. This is all about being able to talk to other people. And the more you get to know these people, the more comfortable they'll be with you and the more likely they'll be interested in your organization and actually helping with it. So that's the number one thing. Just if anybody in your group says, I can't fundraise it, I don't have those skills, you just say, well, you like people, right? You're curious about other people. That's all you need to do, you need to have to be a fundraiser. We talk about that a lot. The second adage that I always tell people relates to people are so afraid to ask other people, especially people they don't know well, for help. So they don't even want to ask you to put their trash out if they're away on a weekend, much less ask people for money. And what I always try to say to people is, this is not asking. This is sharing something really awesome that you're really excited about. So when I talk to people about Friends of Woodford's Corner, I don't think of it as, oh my God, you know, she's just not interested in this kind of thing. I don't want to ask her for her time. I don't want to ask her eventually for her money. It's not that. It's, hey, there's this really cool thing going on in our community. I want to share it with you. And if you can flip asking to sharing and sort of remind yourself of that every time you have to embark on this fundraising, it really does get easier. And you know, with my daughter's nonprofits board, I sent them all out a survey before we met, just to sort of try to find out, you know, take the pulse on how they felt about fundraising. And, you know, one of the questions I asked was, how comfortable are you asking your friends for stuff? Because if you're really
Mhm.
uncomfortable asking people for help, if you think of this fundraising as asking for help, you're probably, there's just going to be too many barriers for you. And so I immediately want to look at that, but then I want to flip it around and go, you're not asking them for anything. You're sharing this awesome thing with them that may change their life. So the third thing is fundraising is not a spectator sport. You can't do it from the stands. You really have to do it by doing. And it was so awesome. My daughter's nonprofit relates to yoga and mindfulness. And what's the number one word they always use in yoga classes? Begins with a P.
Present.
Practice.
Oh, practice.
It's a
Practice.
practice, right? And we should never
That's good,
expect that
that's
we're going to
good.
be good at anything the first try. I'm learning pickleball right now, and you know, I'm an athlete. Being an athlete has been a big part of my identity my whole life, and I suck at pickleball. Well, of course I suck. I've never done it before, and it's going to be the same way the first few times you get out there and start sharing about your organization. You might be a little awkward, you might be a little nervous, but just like practicing anything, every time you do it is going to get smoother and more effective. But you can't develop unless you practice. And you just have to put yourself in that first situation where you're not going to ace it, but at least you've tried. And each time you do it, you'll get better.
That's cool. So how has the board been responding? Obviously, you've gone from, you know, raising $10,000 through this group, right? Your board, and this year you're going for 20. So it must be working.
Yeah, and I would say that first year with 10,000, that was 3 of us who carried the weight, and the
Yeah.
other people didn't do anything, and we didn't really do much training.
Mhm.
So each year we do a little more training. I would say they all, not all, the newest board members show up going, I don't know how to do this, I can't do this.
Yeah.
The people who've done it before, even though they maybe have progressed, their instincts are still kicking in and going, oh, I hate this. But then, you know, once we remind them how well they did last year, they're like,
They
oh
want
yeah,
to do better.
I can do this. And, you know, we have one person who I think you guys know, Vonette.
Oh yeah.
You know, Vonette. And she is a person who just
She doesn't
doesn't
she
think
can do
she's
it.
good at it. And
Yeah.
but it's extraordinary how many friends she has brought into the organization. And then, you know, once these people know more and more about what we do, it's just so much easier to share the responsibility of helping us continue to do that work. And, you know, she does great. I mean, I always call her our rock star, even though she's like, no, I don't know how to do this. I can't do this. So again, it's developmental. You're not going to, I mean, unless there's not very many people who are going to go from 0 to 100 in
Good
1 year.
reminder.
It's
Yeah.
a constant thing.
The other thing, in addition to kind of practice, which you're saying, and it's a progression, this isn't like the board comes in and hits 100 the first year, is I think, Nancy, you're changing the culture of your board, that this is an expectation, that it's fun, that everybody's doing it together, and you're giving them the tools to try it. And that then, you know, the next year, like Vonette is like, oh, I did get that much money this year. I can beat that this year, you know, and I love thinking about that because I don't know, Abby and Amanda, do your boards have a culture of like, yeah, we're going to help raise money for this organization?
Well, right now we're going through our annual appeal process, so sending out hundreds of letters to residents. I want to say maybe 1,500 letters, and we have them all labeled out on the conference table alphabetically, and we have a list with all the people that they're being sent to, and our board members are expected to come in, look for people they know on the list,
Yeah.
and write a little nice note on each of those that says, thank you for your contribution last year. We hope you can join us again. Or,
Sure.
hey, it was great playing golf with you. Please join me in my cause. This is what's important to me. And so they do know that they have, at the very least, that as a contribution. And we also requested that each of our board members this year come up with 3 to 5 additional sort of corporate level sponsors that are outside of the downtown that may need to make a presence within a community like ours that we could then sort of formalize and ask for in the future. So we did receive a lot of really good ideas. We just have to actually find the time to work on it. And that's the
Yeah.
hard part.
Mm.
Right. Right. So this is an expectation that your board has that they will be participating in this way. Some of what I'm hearing Nancy say too is that there's the follow-up in like the relationship piece of like, hey, you didn't respond to the letter, but wouldn't you like to do this year and support, you know, Friends of Woodford's Corner? Is that a step, Nancy, that there's like
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, I can't tell you how many times people go, "Oh, I'm so glad you reminded me." You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
good
people
point.
need reminders.
Yeah.
You're not intruding by again being helpful. Amanda, I wanted to say kudos to you guys because that is a very logistically challenging way of dealing with it, and it's a very advanced way of doing it. And I think it's really effective. We used to do that at Portland Trails. And I mean, we had thousands of members, and we had certain letters that had 6 different people, you know, who'd written a little personal note. And yeah, very effective and very advanced and logistically very heavy. So great to you for doing that.
Well, I have to admit, I don't do much with it. It's Camille, my other office lady
Mm.
person. She's that minded person. I'm going to bomb into your office and sit down and talk to you because I'm that extrovert that you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Camille's more of the like, you know,
Yeah. It takes
But
both though.
you guys, the idea here though is that when somebody gets a letter from an amorphous organization that, yeah, maybe they've heard of, it's nowhere near as compelling as having a friend, neighbor, workmate, relative who has actually personalized the letter. And that's where your board members, you know, they all have friends, they all have acquaintances, and that is how they can help.
Right. So I promised Nancy she wouldn't have to be with us for the whole hour. Nancy, is there anything else that you're like, oh, I wanted to tell them this. I want to make sure I didn't, you know, miss something.
So one part of this is I think a lot of people, well, 2 things. A lot of people can kind of get fundraising, and that feels more doable than fundraising. And the beauty of fundraising is when you bring a friend to an event, for example, they might get really sparked, and that might lead them to being a volunteer for your organization. And we all need volunteers, right? And then that volunteer might get so excited that they become a board member. So, you know, even though a person may not give you any money for 5 years, you know, this is a long haul project. Every time they increase their involvement somehow is helping the organization, and eventually, hopefully, they'll leave their bequest to you. But you know, when you just everything you're doing, trying to share the organization with other people could lead to better, more resources for the organization. The last thing I'll say has to do with one of the reasons why fundraising is knee-jerk challenging for people is there are people who think fundraising is 100% about asking for money. And that is completely wrong, false. Because fundraising is really about sharing the organization with your people and building a relationship with people that might be able to help you. Fundraising involves, hey, just wanted to make sure you knew we're doing this event this weekend, this wine pull. Wine pull or wine pull?
Pull.
Pull?
Whole.
Yeah, like
Pull
you
it
pull
out.
it out of the bag.
And that's a place I'm so mad at myself because I've just been so busy this year, and Friends of Woodford's Corner has so many great events. We did this neighborhood yard sale this weekend, and if I had been really doing my relationship building, I should have sent an email to each or picked up the phone or
Oh.
texted every single one of the people who I usually go to donate and say, just
Good
want to make
point.
sure you know about this cool thing. I think, you know, you'll see lots of neighbors out there, and thank you for making this kind of thing possible. So the relationship building, which is so huge in fundraising, is so much more than ever asking. Thankfully, you usually only have to ask once a year, although Abby, those banks, they're there for the community. You shouldn't feel bad about asking them for money multiple times. And then anyway, related to this, why people don't want to fundraise is, you know, they think it's 100% the ask, which it isn't. And they think that they're going to be asking people about their financial situation. That is also a fallacy. You don't have to ask them anything about their budget, their savings, how expensive their house is. You don't have to ask any of
That's
that.
so funny. I never knew that that was like something people think. Like that
Oh,
never
yeah.
even occurred to me.
And there's a saying that people would rather tell you about their sex life than their financial equation. People have learned from an early age that it's rude to talk about money. And so they sometimes think that if they're going to ask people for financial help for an organization that I love, that I'm somehow going to also have to find out what their financial situation is. And one thing in Maine is you can meet somebody who is looking like they were homeless yesterday, and they actually have a ton of money. But you don't have to ask them that. If you think this is a fun and inspiring cause for them, that's where the conversation starts. You never ask about their money, ever.
Wow. That's great. Any questions for Nancy before she, I'm sure, has to get on her way this morning?
Okay, but I want a question for these guys.
Go for it.
Is this thawing the freeze, or are you saying easy for her to say, we can't do that? I mean, I really want honest feedback.
I want to take you on the road. Nancy Ketch.
I'll just say I can kind of reinforce some of what you're saying. In my outside work life, I'm involved with a couple of organizations that do a lot of fundraising. And those are some of the things like people give to people first, causes second. Kind of being strategic about who does asks, because sometimes if you know somebody, you have a sense of what their ability is. And we also ask anyone that is asking others to be donors. We used to do a phone-a-thon with one of our organizations, and even if it's $5, don't ask for money unless you've given yourself, because you're more apt to portray the importance to it. You know, and individualizing what's important to somebody, you know, focusing on the parts of your organization that are going to appeal to somebody. And here again, with the relationships, if it's somebody that knows them, they know what makes them tick. And not forgetting, if they are asking for money, to actually make the ask.
Yep. Yeah, you do a lot of fundraising in your other life, Nancy. Anybody else want to answer Nancy Grant's question?
Okay, I know Anne wants me to get off the Zoom,
No,
but
I-
I did have two more thoughts. One is, you know, sometimes we make the decision for the donors and then never bother to answer. So we're like, oh my God, their oldest kid just went off to college. They've got college tuition. You know, somebody in the house lost their job. Somebody's been sick. I can't ask them for money now. Yes, you can. They get to make the decision, not you. And if you keep making the decision for them, you probably won't ever ask anybody, because it looks tough to everybody out there. And I want to finish with a story about one of my favorite donors in my life, who of course I met on a bicycle. And she and her husband live so modestly. Neither of them ever had a job that, you know, made a killing. They absolutely nickel and dime on everything: food, going out to eat, their car, how they fix up their house, everything. And they are two of the most philanthropically generous people I have ever known. Their feeling is, hey, we don't need much, but all this good work out there, we want to help. So,
awesome
you know,
story.
again, you just never know. And if you start to develop, this person is actually, we are no longer involved through an organization, but she's one of my best friends, because our values just so align on let's make the world a better place. And so I just love being around her. But she started as a donor. And, you know, it's all relationship building, and you never know what people can give and will give.
You're amazing. Such good information.
It really
No,
is,
really.
Nancy. Yeah, I feel like I've heard bits and pieces of, you know, what you've said before, but how you are telling a little bit more of the story that makes it a little easy, a little more tangible. So thanks.
Yeah, really. Thanks for coming, sharing your time with us and your amazing knowledge. I hope everybody here, you know, feels like they got filled up a little bit. I did. I'm not good at fundraising. As Sylvie knows, I'm always like, oh.
No, I was thinking of that when Nancy said people think they're not good at fundraising. And we all know Anne is a brilliant relationship builder. And her track record for our bringing in sponsorship for our conference coming up, killed it.
Well,
So,
thanks, Sylvie. Like I'm trying to practice.
Yeah, you're doing well in your practice.
See, Nancy, you're helping all of us. All right. Well, Nancy, you're welcome to stay with us. We're doing a little other facilitated conversation, or you are welcome to head on your way. The sun is out.
It's also my niece's wedding is this weekend, and I have to make 3 quiches for the brunch the day after. And I got to do it in about 20 minutes. So it was so nice to meet everybody. Good luck with the brilliant work you're doing. I am such a believer in Main Streets. I've seen it all over the state, and you know, I've watched in our little community of Woodford's Corner. Next time you're in Portland, make sure to stop in.
Yeah, it's a great spot. Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks so much, Nancy.
Okay, we'll see ya.